Well, today, as we've been discussing, is the day Donald Trump's presidency comes to an end.
Joe Biden inaugurated later on. Mr. Trump will not be there, a snub from an outgoing president that hasn't happened for more than 150 years. Joining us now, journalist Megyn Kelly, who has experience, to a certain extent, of Trump's wrath. Very good to see you this morning, Megyn. He leaves office after one term, 2 impeachments, one of which is incitement to an insurrection. He has the lowest average approval rating at just 41%, lower than any president since polling began. Would you acknowledge that President Trump is the worst US president?
But other than that, Mr. Lincoln, how'd you like to play?
You've had your run-ins with Trump, but you have backed him and defended him at times, haven't you? So, what's your assessment of him?
Well, I wouldn't say I backed him. I think I can see him clearly. You know, I think I've been fair to him when he's done bad things. I've criticized him, but I don't have what they call Trump derangement syndrome, where I see everything he does through the worst lens. So, I mean, I know a lot of Republicans, and I have a lot of Republicans listening to my podcast. And so I know how they view him, and they love Trump. They see all of his flaws. They see his temperament problems, which in the end sullied his exit in a way, you know, I'm sure he would like to have back. But they like him on paper. They like the policies he pushed, and they certainly like the biggest thing Trump did, and it's ironic if you think about the way things went down 2 weeks ago, is he taught Republicans how to fight, to stand up to Democrats who were trying to shame them out of doing this or shame them into doing this, and calling them all sorts of names just for having more conservative views, and to just sort of take it and try to fight through it. And, you know, for example, put Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court, which is something conservatives love. They got 3 Supreme Court justices and so on. So on paper, I think most Republicans consider his presidency a win. But the thing that, you know, I don't want to say brought him down because he lost the election in November, but the thing that tarnished his legacy more than any other was his temperament, which is the thing I was asking him about.
I would also say, Megyn, it was this thing about fighting. You know, his supporters at the US Capitol on January the 6th took him seriously. They took him literally. They went down to the Capitol and they fought to stop the steal in what many people think was one of the darkest days in American history. And for you, with your legal mind and your background as a lawyer, what did you make of that? Because we're now in a situation where you've got thousands of Americans who may potentially be prosecuted for inciting a riot that was incited by their president.
I've been reading you on this, Piers. As you know, I love to read your column, and I heard you arguing earlier or discussing this earlier with Robert. And I disagree with you. I don't think Trump's words amounted to incitement as the legal definition of that term applies here. Because it would have to be much more under the law and the Supreme Court precedent, much more immediate. It would have to be closer to go to the Capitol, storm the Senate office building, try to get Mike Pence, and, you know, do it now. Get your guns, go. I'm with, right? It would have to be like that. That's just the law. And you can't, even though, you know, his rhetoric was incendiary, you can't prosecute. The people can't defend themselves by saying, my president made me do it. You know, it's like the devil made me do it. That doesn't work.
But that is what they... I mean, listen, I hear you, and I totally respect your superior legal knowledge, by the way, but there will be a different issue for Trump, won't there? Mitch McConnell is the guy I'm watching very closely because yesterday he took the gloves off with Trump. He said that his lies and his incendiary rhetoric led directly to the insurrection at the Capitol. Now, the reason that may be significant, I think Mitch McConnell is working himself up to vote for a conviction of Trump in the Senate. And if he does, I think he can bring 16 more with him. Trump may end up not being prosecuted, you know, and going to jail for anything, but he might end up being convicted. The first US president to ever be successfully impeached.
Well, you're right that there's not going to be criminal charges against Trump that are going to stick. Not for incitement. Absolutely not. But that doesn't answer the question about whether he's committed an impeachable offense, as far as I'm concerned. There are other lawyers like Alan Dershowitz who would disagree. He thinks if it was constitutionally protected speech, you can't impeach him over that. I don't believe that. The history of impeachment allows impeachment for abuse of power.
Yeah.
And you could absolutely make the argument that he committed that from the date of our election forward and all of his rhetoric and so on leading up to the events at the Capitol. So, and certainly the day of the riot, you could make the case
What
strongly.
does Joe Biden,
There's a
Megyn,
legal question about whether you can impeach a president who's no longer in office, however. There's a bunch of legal hurdles. And I don't think McConnell has the sway you think he does in the U.S. Senate.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. I was very struck by him going public because the last impeachment process, he just kept completely stum, rock solid behind Trump, and now he's obviously taken a different position. I guess the bigger picture, really, is what does Joe Biden do about the fact that Trump still has this huge hold over tens of millions of Americans? We know Trump increased his vote. You know, all right, Biden had the biggest vote ever. And good, well done him. But Trump had the second biggest ever. 10 million more people voted for him this time than last time. What does Biden do to try and bring those people back from, as we saw at the US Capitol, you know, almost a brainwashing influence that Trump has had over them into being violent?
I don't think he can solve that particular problem. I think he can lower the rhetoric, lower the temperature, lower, you know, sort of the way we talk about each other in a way, hopefully, that's more unifying. Although, you know, Biden said some divisive things himself, very divisive during the course of this campaign. But, you know, Trump is in a class of one when it comes to rhetoric. So I think he can lower the temperature. But the country is very divided for good reasons. You know, they see policy in a very different way. They don't want to come together on the Biden agenda. And I'll tell you, Piers, if you look at sort of Biden's first agenda items, I'll tell you, having worked at Fox News for 13 and a half years, it looks like a wish list for the head of some Republican PAC who wants to raise money to fight the Democrats' agenda. It's like a way to provide amnesty to 11 million people in the country illegally, taking away the travel ban from some Muslim countries, rejoining the Paris Climate Accords, possibly rejoining the Iran deal. I mean, on and on. So I do think the one thing that could unite Republicans now, who are feeling very fractured, is the Democratic agenda. But I don't see the Democrats and the Republicans coming together.
No, I think you're right.
Megyn, what do you think Trump will do now? What does he do on the sidelines? He has said he's begun a movement which has only just started. You said he's taught the Republicans how to fight. I mean, Trump is not going to stop that fight. What would you expect from him?
Well, I think, just to back up, I think one of the reasons McConnell will probably vote to impeach, as Piers said, is because he's done with Trump. These more establishment Republicans are like, for the love of God, go away, right? We dealt with you. We had to kiss the ring while you were in office, but go away and don't come back. They'd like to see his political future done. But the reality is, even this time, as we've seen so many other times, Trump's not done. The core support for him amongst those, we call them Fifth Avenue Republicans. Remember, he said I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and they wouldn't, you know, turn on me. And he's right for 33% of the Republican Party. They're not going to turn on him. And there was a Morning Consult poll out after the Capitol riots, it was on January 14th, that said, who would you vote for president right now, Republicans? And 42% said Donald Trump, way more than the next contender, which was Mike Pence at 16. So he still is the standard bearer. He still has a lot of power. People may not like it if they don't like Trump, but the country's not done with him. And as you know from a lifetime of covering him, the man does not shy away from the spotlight. It's his oxygen.
Yeah,
so
and although he's lost his tweeting, but that won't stop him having an ability to influence the media because he has that big following. Megyn, always good to talk to you. It's going to be an amazing day today. Such a weird day with nobody there. You know, 25,000 National Guard. You know, Trump finally got his wall. It's a wall of National Guard around the incoming president.
I know. It's sad. I have to tell you, that piece of it breaks my heart. I've been on the National Mall for a few inaugurations. And the one thing I always say when covering the inauguration is how proud I am of our country, that, you know, we do this peaceful transition of power. We can always count on it. I hope it will be peaceful today, but I'm sad it has to go down the way it's going to.
Yeah, I share your view. Megyn, always great to have your perspective. Thank you so much for staying up for us.
Good to see you guys.
And looking so ridiculously fresh-faced at 2 o'clock in the morning. How do you do that, by the way?
Thank you. Well, I took a little nap with my makeup on.
Great to talk to you, Megyn. All the best.
The podcast
Yeah.
is The Megyn Kelly Show, and it's definitely worth a listen just to get a
Really,
different
really
perspective on things.
sharp perspective, yeah.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? Because how does Joe Biden heal those divisions where you've got somebody who all these people support on the sidelines who's constantly scratching away at the scab?
There will
so
be
that the
there will
healing
be
can't happen.
There'll be a huge groundswell of excitement about Joe Biden, and there'll be a lot of positivity, and he'll say all the right things today. The really hard bit for him comes in a few months' time when he realises actually he's in a very difficult situation. The country economically is on its knees. From coronavirus, it's on its knees. You know, in terms of polarising sides, on its knees. It's a big job. And the guy's not a spring chicken. He's 78 years old. Is it tough? It's tough.